Mexican records got the lights down low. Souldisco where the groovy people go. Hit play, let the music flow. Old school beats with a modern glow.
Hello everybody and a very warm welcome back to the latest episode of Hidden Jewels of Soul and Disco. I do hope you're doing absolutely fantastic. Today we're gonna feature one of my favorite female vocal groups who are not getting, in my humble opinion, the credit they deserve. Today we're featuring The Blossoms. The Blossoms, and now stay tuned, aka The Dreamers, aka The Playgirls, aka The Rolettes, aka The Rebelettes, aka The Girlfriends, was a sextet which was founded in 1954, and to be more specific, at the John C. Fremont High School. And originally, this group got together to sing gospel music, just out of fun and not with an intention to become a world famous vocal group, but just having fun singing music. That changed around 1955 when the girls joined Mr. Richard Berry in the studio to release a couple of singles which were released on Flair and KPM Records. But who were the original members of the group? Well, let's start. We have Fanita Barrett, who was later known as Fanita James. Then there was Gloria A. Jones and Jewel Cobbs, followed by Pat Howard and the twin sisters Annette and Nanette Williams. During their work with Richard, Columbia Records heard of the girls and thought, well, we should sign them. And back then, being signed to Columbia Records, one of the major labels, was a big step up for the group. And they released 3 singles. Let's start with the single from 1957, which was called He Promised Me, and on the B-side we have Move On. In 1958 there was Little Louie, Have Faith in Me, and also in 1958 we have No Other Love and Baby Daddy O. Also in 1958 Nanette decided to raise a family and left the group. As a replacement, the now legendary Delene Wright joined the group. She's nowadays known as Delene Love, and she also sang lead vocals on the 1958 release of No Other Love on Capitol. When Delene joined the group, it was the first time that the group had actually a lead singer, which brought a new vibe into the group. Unfortunately for the Capitol releases, they didn't chart at all, and were actually no success. But that didn't stop the group. In 1960, they released their next single, G, But I'm Lonesome, and on the B-side was Sugar Beat, which was released as the Playgirls in 1960 for RCA Record. The next single followed on a different label, Challenge in 1961, Write Me a Letter. Something I want to also point out is that in 1959, the group sang backing vocals on the Sam Cooke hit, Everybody Loves Cha-Cha-Cha. During the summer of 1962, everything should be changing for the group. Phil Spector heard that Vicky Carr was releasing her debut single, He's a Rebel, on Liberty Records. Usually, Phil Spector used the Crystals as they were his, I wouldn't say cash cow, but his most successful group on his label. But at that time, the Crystals were on tour and were not able to rush into the studio because Phil Spector wanted to release the song first because he knew he was having a hit. So he called the Blossoms to come into the studio and record a song which would be later become He's a Rebel, which was a smashing hit during the 60s. But as you can see on the cover, the song was credited to the Crystals, but was originally recorded by the Blossoms. The Crystals were not happy with this decision, and as you can imagine, the Blossoms were paid triple scale for the recording, but yeah, you guessed it right, concerning royalties and everything else, they were pretty much left out. This should be later happening also to some solo work from Darlene Love, which was also stated to be done by the Crystals, but it opened up a new opportunity for the Blossoms, because the Blossoms became the go-to backing vocal group for future projects of Phil Spector. For example, the White House Brothers released in 1964 You've Lost That Loving Feeling, which was backed up by the Blossoms. That's Life, Frank Sinatra, was backed up by the Blossoms. Mary Clayton's her version of the Shoop Shoop song It's in His Kiss was backed up by the Blossoms. I can't count on how many works these ladies were involved during the 60s. And also how impressed I am by the variation of styles, of musical styles, this group was able to perform on. Also in 1964, a groundbreaking musical TV show was put on air. Can you guess which one? Yes.
From ABC Television Center in Hollywood, Shindig.
The Blossoms were never officially introduced in the show, at least from all the episodes I have seen, but they were at least shown in the credits. And the Blossoms, these ladies, shared the stage with the likes of, and I'm just naming a few, Aretha Franklin, Jackie Wilson, James Brown, Marvin Gaye, just to name a few. I could go on and on. Martha and the Vandells. I could go on and on and on. And also in that year, in 1964, they appeared in a show which is now a cult classic. And this show was called The Tammy Show, and it's allegedly known that Prince had the segment of James Brown appearing in that show on loop in his studio. Also during that time, Darlene Love was busy recording A Christmas Gift for You from the Phil's record, where she appeared, and also the Crystals and the Ronettes, and it's nowadays one of the most beloved Christmas albums ever. In 1968, Steve Binder, who was responsible for the Tammy Show, also produced a TV show for a singer who didn't appear in public for a very long time, and the pressure was very high. He transformed a show which should have been a Christmas show into a now legendary comeback special, the 68 comeback special from Elvis Presley. And the Blossoms appeared with Elvis in a segment where he sings gospel music. Also, if you haven't seen that show, it's also highly, highly recommended, and segments of it is also available on YouTube. Darlene was busy recording, and if you want to have a selection of her recordings, I highly recommend that you check out this record store day release. It was limited to 3,500 copies, but it's still available out there, and it includes River Deep, Mountain High. Darlene was also backing singer on the Ike and Tina Turner classic. Then we have Too Late to Say You're Sorry, Mr. Fix-It, He's Sure the Boy I Love. You'll find this on colored vinyl. I would have preferred black one, but just depends on the taste you have. But once again, highly, highly recommended. In 1972, finally, the Blossoms got their chance to do a complete album. Yes, it took till 1972 till these ladies, also after certain lineup changes, could release their album. And here it is in all of its 70s glory, the Blossoms' Shockwave. Mr. Gene Page was heavily involved in this album, and all I can say is you're in for a treat. We don't have a reissue available on vinyl from this one, but that was the bad news. But the good news is, if you want to have an original copy of it, it's between $15 to $50. Once again, depending on the condition. It was critically, it was highly acclaimed, but it wasn't really a big hit back then. So now it gets a little tricky depending on the year, but in some cases you read in 1973, in some cases you read 1974 or 1975. Darlene Love left the group. The group was on an extensive tour with Dionne Warwick, and the tension within the group was very high. So after my research, I think it was more likely 1975 when Darlene Love left the group. Gene King came in as a replacement, so there were later on certain lineups, and Fanita James continued with the groups even after the late 70s, during the 80s, and they had some reunion shows, but getting once again so involved in so many recordings, well, not getting really the credit for it, that time was over. But nowadays I can say that this group, if you hear songs from the 70s, and like I said, they were involved in so many recordings, if they wouldn't have sung on these recordings, I'm pretty sure many of the songs wouldn't sound the way they sound, and maybe wouldn't have gotten hits. And you can say about Phil Spector, you know, we have our opinion about Mr. Phil Spector, but he had an ear for sound, and he knew when he had something good. And I'm pretty sure he knew with the Blossoms what a goldmine he had. So if you have the chance, all I can say is check out their TV appearances from the 60s. Check out the music they released, and also highly, highly recommended Shockwave from 1972. We always have to consider, and for me it's very important on the channel to point out that musicians deserve all the credits they get and they can have. And for me it's always very important to put on the spotlight on these artists, on these groups who over the years are going to be forgotten. So that one was a very important episode for me. If you like that episode, I also highly suggest that you check out the playlist appearing here, and I catch you on the next one.